Well, this is take 2 of the 18 by 18 cutting board made out of cherry and maple. The first one that I attempted to do, I didn't clamp it up correctly and it warped on me. And I went back and I tried to salvage it. I put it back under the clamps and cawls and I left it in there for over 48 hours. And when I pulled them out of the clamps and cawls, it looked like it was going to stay good and flat, and I thought it was going to be okay. So I went inside, picked me something to eat, was gone for about an hour. When I came back, it had already warped 3/32 of an inch on me. And that's just too much. I could not salvage it and make a good cutting board out of it. So had to scrap it, so I'm starting all over. This time I'm doing it differently. I'm doing like I normally do all my cutting boards. It's going to be totally inside my clamps. While I'm using that jig for a flat surface to work on, I am not using it to assemble any of the cutting board halves like I did on the first time. Again, because this thing is too wide to go in my planers, I'm doing it in 2 halves. I have them numbered 1 through 14, and this is boards 1 through 7. And then on the other table over there, when I get through gluing this one up, I'll do boards 8 through 14. But I'll do 7 boards at a time. That way I can run those through my planer and get them all planed down to the same thickness. And then glue those 2 halves together to make the 18 by 18 board in the first glue up. Now, like I said, in the checkerboard pattern, you have to glue these up 2 times. The first time was when the straight lines, and then the second time I'll come back and I'll cut them across the lines, and then I'll glue those back together, staggered pattern to get the checkerboard effect, and then glue them up that way. So there's quite a bit of glue up and quite a bit of labor involved in these, so that's the reason that they cost a little bit more than a regular cutting board. There's a lot more labor in them. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get started on it. So I'm going to glove up and get to cooking on it. So I'll be back in just a second. Okay, again, I like to use Titebond 3 glue from all my cutting boards. So I'm going to start out and I'll stand up all the boards so that I can get the glue on them. Then I'll stand this one up the opposite direction. Okay. So, put a little bit on this one. And I'll spread them out. All these cutting board pieces are numbered, and they're even marked front and rear so that I can keep them in the right orientation, in the right order, because I do have them matched up, and dry fit has been done to make sure that it's going to have a good tight fit when it's all put together. So that's board number 7. This will be board number 6. So I'll put a little bit on this one. I like to use a lot of glue. I don't scrimp on cutting boards with my glue ups because it's very important that they have a good amount of glue in there and a good glue up, so it's nice and dry and you don't have any coming apart on you. So that's the reason I put glue on both sides of my board. So I've got some on this side. Now I'll put some on this other side. When you squeeze them up together, you want to see glue come out between the boards. That way you know you've got a good glue up and you've got a lot of glue and you've got the right amount of glue. Don't scrimp on the glue. Don't be afraid to use a lot of glue. Glue is cheap when considered. If you have one fail and you've got to go back and make that cutting board again, or heaven forbid, if you're doing a piece of furniture or something like that and the glue gives way, you've got major work to do. So, all right. This one is ready, and then you see, again, I like to put witness marks on my boards so that I can see and make sure the alignments are where I want them. So then we put some more glue on this third board. Again, I like the Titebond 3 on all my cutting boards. In fact, I use it on just about all my glue ups now. Doesn't matter, but mostly I started using it for my cutting boards because it's waterproof. It also has a longer work time, especially when you're doing larger boards like this. You need that extra time to make sure you get everything lined up and in the right orientation, and so that you can get the proper squeeze out and everything looking good. So you can see the glue ups take a little bit of time, a little bit of effort. Again, I want to tell you, reiterate, the issues that I had with this first cutting board was because I did not use the cawls that clamp down on the board and keep it lying flat. If I had done that, I would not have had the issues and the board would have been good. So it's strictly my fault. I just made an assumption that this jig that I'm working on was going to be a good fit and it's going to work good, and it actually did not work good for these thinner boards. It works great for my rustic flag signs because they're made out of 2x4 materials, and that jig holds the 2x4 stuff in place a whole lot easier and better than these thin cutting boards are. So that's my fault totally. Again, if I had used my cawls like I was supposed to, it would have worked fine. Make sure you use the right clamps. Test everything, do your dry fits, make sure everything looks good, and make sure everything's going to work right. Looks can be deceiving because I thought I had everything lined up right and it looked good when I had it in the jig last time, but it didn't work out, and that's nobody's fault but mine. I like to do my glue ups at night. It's about 8:30, 9 o'clock, something like that on a Saturday night. I like to do my glue ups at night and then leave them in the clamp overnight. And that way they get a good 8 to 10 hour dry up before I even check on them in the morning. So I like to leave these in the clamps for about 15 to 24 hours just to give the glue that extra chance and extra time to adhere and stick real good. Titebond says you could do this, you could actually in about 2 hours pull it out of the clamps. Just don't make any jostling hard moves with it and it would be okay. But I figure if I leave it in longer, let it set longer, let it cure longer, I'll get a better finish. And so that's just been my norm, is just to leave them in the glue up for 24 hours if I can. All right, so this will be the last glue that I have to apply on this set. I'll get this one spread out, and then I will start showing y'all how I clamp them up and get the cawls on there and make sure everything's lined up like it's supposed to. Like I said, I didn't film it, but I've already done the dry fit. And I do the dry fit with the entire cutting board, not just the halves that I'm working on. So I'll make sure that everything works like it's supposed to. So all my lines are lined back up. So now I'll push it down to this side over here. Okay, everything's about where I want it. I'll bring these up close to them, but I'm not ready to squeeze those out yet. One cawl underneath, and again, all my cawls have the packing tape on there, the clear packing tape, and that just helps it turn loose, not stick to the board. And so I've got on one here on this side, and I've got a cawl on this side, and then I've got one set of F clamps right here. I'll clamp down just slightly. One F clamp that I'll set down right here, clamp up just slightly. All right, and one F clamp on this side. These are the parts that I did not put on the other one, these cawls and the F clamps. That's what caused my issue. I'll get this clamp up started. And I see some glue squeeze out coming out. Get that tightened a little bit more, that one down a little bit more. That one down a little bit more. These cawls right here, top and bottom, when they squeeze together, they keep the board flat, and that's what I'm looking for. We'll take a third clamp, and it's going to go underneath. I'm going to put it in the center. get equal force right there. Before I go much further, I'm going to go ahead and dip my rags in the water. And I want to clean up as much of this glue squeeze out as I can. Now, while it's easier to get to, that makes the finishing of the board a whole lot easier than if I were to let that glue dry and then try to come back and clean it up. That glue would be kind of hard and it would not be a nice, pretty, clean board. Alright, so now that I've got that done, I've got 2 more clamps here that I'm going to put from the opposite side. These are going to come in from the top side. And putting these from the top side, that puts an opposite force coming from the top. Whereas the other first 3 I put on there had a gluing force coming from the bottom. So now this kind of neutralizes the forces from the top clamps. Now that's good and square and flat. I get a little bit more squeeze out coming out, which is good. I want to see that. Getting as much of the glue off as possible will help with the cleanup. So now I'm going to stand it up and do the same thing on the other side. I've got the wax paper there, but I'm going to pull that away. That wax paper was mostly to protect my clamps. I'll get that out of the way and I'll clean up most of that glue out of the way. Get that pretty good and cleaned up. Not a glamorous video, but it does explain a lot of things about when people make cutting boards, why it costs so much. Handmade cutting boards, like the ones that I make and other people make, are a little bit more expensive because we don't have factories to run them, and we don't run them out thousands at a time in a month. Most of us do them one at a time, just like I am. So it costs a little bit more because it takes us a little bit longer to do them. By the same token, you're getting a particular style or pattern that you're wanting made. These are all custom made. My customer wants this one to be a checkerboard pattern, and so he's getting exactly what he ordered. Anyway, this is pretty much half the first of them glued up. I'm real pleased with the way this is working. I know this one's going to be a lot flatter because I do have the caws. I know they're going to help hold it flat, which is what it needed last time. And that, like I said, that was nobody's fault but mine. I made an assumption. I didn't check on it like I should have. And I paid the price for it. So anyway, that's it. And like I said, I'm not going to film the other one. The other one's going to go together the same way. Then when I get through with the 2 halves, I'll run them through the planers, get them down close to the exact same thickness, nice and smooth. Then I'll glue those up. That glue joint I'll be able to just clean up with the sander and get it nice and smooth and fitting good, because when I glue the 2 halves together, then it's too wide to go through my joiner. That's the reason I've got to do it in 2 halves. I can run these 2 halves, this half and the other half, I can run those through my joiner, clean them up, and then glue them together to make the 18 by 18 size. But I can't run the 18-inch through there because my planer only handles a 12-inch wide board.